Security, 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 security.
Since 9/11, a primary focus of our governments has been on security. In response to that incident, the Homeland Security Act was signed into law in November of 2002. This established the Department of Homeland Security as an executive department of the United States. The executive of the United States is the president. In Hawaii, the executive is the governor. 3 months after the Homeland Security Act was signed, Senator Daniel K. Akaka of Hawaii submitted a bill to amend that act by adding agriculture and biosecurity to the Department of Homeland Security's duties. In Senator Akaka's bill, the definition of the term agriculture is incredibly broad and covers almost everything on the planet except technology, finance, and the practice of law. The bill says that biosecurity means protection from the risks posed by biological agents, like, say, an injection of a genetic material, and also chemical agents, like maybe clouds of chemical gases that could be released into the atmosphere, or radiological agents, which are high-energy electromagnetic waves, like 5G waves, that could cause damage to plant or animal health, the agricultural economy, the environment, and human health. Biosecurity also includes the exclusion, eradication, and control of biological agents that cause agricultural diseases. And the term agricultural disease means an outbreak of a plant or animal disease, like a virus, or a pest infestation that requires prompt action in order to prevent injury or damage to people, plants, livestock, property, the economy, or the environment. So according to these legal definitions, the cause of the most recent global lockdown emergency was an agricultural disease and a breach of biosecurity. But that federal bill was introduced in 2003. And after the governor's response to Hawaii's state of emergency in 2022, local lawmakers were creating bills that could limit the governor's emergency powers in the future. Today, agriculture, biosecurity, and emergency powers are coming together again in a new bill signed into law by Hawaii Governor Josh Green. House Bill 427. A bill relating to biosecurity, changes the name of the Hawaii Department of Agriculture to the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity. In Section 1, the bill explains that the department is headed by a board of 10 members, and the governor appoints a chairperson from amongst these members. Then in Section 8, it says the chairperson the governor appointed appoints a deputy director to oversee the biosecurity program. The bill explicitly states that the deputy director will be appointed without regard to Chapter 76. Chapter 76 is titled Civil Service Law. Its very first subsection is titled Purposes, Merit Principle. It reads in part, the merit principle is the selection of persons based on their fitness and ability for public employment and the retention of employees based on their demonstrated appropriate conduct and productive performance. It goes on to say it is the declared policy of the state that the human resource program within each jurisdiction be administered in accordance with the following: equal opportunity for all in compliance with all laws prohibiting discrimination, and impartial selection of individuals for public service by means of competitive tests which are fair, objective, and practical. So it seems a little unusual to me that the new Deputy Director of Biosecurity will be appointed without any regard to his capability, productive performance, equal opportunity, or impartiality. Why, with these qualifications, the new deputy director could be the governor's old college drinking buddy. Remember, this person is appointed without regard to Chapter 76. A new function of the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity allowed by this new law in Section 13 is that it may quarantine any farm, facility, or business known to be infested, and the department can do this at any time. Also new with this law, in Section 11, the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity, with the approval of the governor, may declare a biosecurity emergency. Of the three conditions listed in Section 11 under which a biosecurity emergency can be declared, Condition 3 appears to be very open to interpretation. In Conditions 1 and 2, there is an established condition that needs attention, but Condition 3 just states that a pest or prohibited or restricted organism is or threatens to be beyond the state's ability to control. Who decides what the state's ability to control is? Is it the governor again? It seems to me that the state's ability to control also depends a great deal on how much effort the state wants to put forward. If they don't want to put forth much effort, then the simplest of circumstances can become beyond the state's ability to control. And who decides at what point something is threatening to be beyond their control? In all these cases, we've got an emergency, and in all these cases, that emergency is based on someone's opinion. Also new in Section 11, a biosecurity emergency shall automatically terminate 100 calendar days after its declaration, unless the declaration is extended by the department with the approval of the governor. Under current Hawaii law, a state of emergency can only last for 60 days, and in both cases, the governor can legally extend the emergency as long as he likes. Remember how long the governor extended our last state of emergency? Another feature of this new law, spelled out in Section 11, is that the governor may requisition and take control of any goods, real property, or watercraft required for the purposes of this section on biosecurity emergencies, or requisition and take control of the temporary use thereof. When I asked the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity what it meant to take control of property, they didn't know. It goes on to say that a requisition shall terminate automatically 100 calendar days after the declaration of a biosecurity emergency, or by a separate proclamation of the governor, whichever occurs first. Since he can extend the emergency, it makes sense to me that he could also extend the requisition. When I asked the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity, they didn't know. And in Section 11, the bill reads, if the governor requisitions and takes control of any property or the temporary use thereof, the owner or any other person entitled thereto shall be paid a sum, determined by the governor to be fair and just compensation for the property or use, within 20 days after the property has been requisitioned and taken, or in monthly or lesser installments if the property is taken for temporary use. Now in subsection C of Section 11, things get really interesting when we're told that for the duration of a declared biosecurity emergency, the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity shall be exempt from Chapter 103D. So what are they exempt from? It turns out that Chapter 103D is the Hawaii Public Procurement Code. The first statute of this chapter, subsection 103D-101, Requirements of Ethical Public Procurement, reads, all public employees shall conduct and participate in public procurement in an ethical manner. Public employees shall act only in the public interest, abide by the statutes, which are the laws, and administrative rules relating to public procurement. Avoid the intent and appearance of unethical behavior, and all parties involved in the negotiation, performance, or administration of state contracts shall act in good faith. So how cool is that? According to how this law is written, in a biosecurity emergency declared by the governor and his appointee, the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity can take control of your property for some amount of money that they think is fair. They're exempt from being law-abiding and ethical, and they have no duty to act in good faith. At least they're admitting it up front. Oh, and in Part C(3) of Section 11, we learned that for the duration of a biosecurity emergency, the governor may transfer monies to the department from any account within the governor's control. And if any person is unwilling to accept the sum determined by the governor as full and complete compensation for the property or use, the person shall be paid 75% of that sum and may sue the state for an additional sum that, when added to the sum already received by the person may consider fair and just compensation for the property or use. Now, do you see the state's great advantage in not having to be ethical, law-abiding, or required to act in good faith? Because if you don't agree with the state, well, you can just sue the state and let the state decide what is fair. That sounds to me like you'll be getting 80% of the original lowball offer plus a wonderful day in court, after spending weeks on preparation or thousands on legal fees. What a great deal. And it's a done deal. The governor signed this bill into law on June 27th, and it became effective on July 1st, 2025. So pay attention, brothers and sisters. It looks like the people are losing their power. The new Deputy Director of Biosecurity can be appointed without regard to impartiality or qualifications. The governor can take control of your property in an emergency he declares, and he can do this without being law-abiding or ethical. The executive has new powers. This is the new law in Hawaii, and the new executive of the United States has already been suspending due process of law when it comes to deportation and homeland security. Remember, that's where we started. Homeland security.
Dozens of agencies charged with homeland security will now be located within one cabinet department with the mandate and legal authority to protect our people.
So now let's hear some words from the current Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security.
Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem on the Hill. She was challenged about the Trump administration's migrant deportations without due process. Secretary Noem was asked to explain habeas corpus, which of course is the constitutional right in this country to challenge an arrest or imprisonment. Here's how she defined it when she was asked by New Hampshire Senator Maggie Hassan.
So Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to.
Let me stop you now. Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President
Habeas
Lincoln
corpus,
used it.
excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea.
That back and forth in Washington today, Secretary Noem tonight saying she supports habeas corpus, but that she also believes the president has the right to suspend it.